Hello, my name is Philippa Reed and I want to show you how I make Vortex coils using the method which was developed by Leisha Politis in Australia. She was the one who really pioneered the development of the Vortex technique. Now there are two types of Vortex coils. This is the classic one, which I hope you can see. Basically it's got a central hole with the spiracles of the coil vortexing out from it. Makes a really nice pattern. Then there's an alternative variation which looks like this, which really is a kind of eccentric vortex coil where you can see that the centre goes off to one side, and we'll look at the way of doing that as well later on. So I'm going to go back and start with showing you how I would make a classic vortex coil. It's basically done using a whole quilling strip, nice long strip, gives you lots of details in your vortex, and you begin by just bending over a little bit at the top of the strip, like that. Now you need to remember that the length of this folded over section basically will dictate the size of the hole in the middle of your vortex. So the bigger the hole, the longer this folded section needs to be. Okay, so we've made that first fold, and I'm just dampening my fingers slightly on a wet wipe, which I like to do just to improve the grip when I'm working. So now we need to make a second fold around the strip end, not too tight to the strip end, just fairly loosely around it. So we've got a piece like that. Okay, now you grip the bottom, and basically what we're going to be doing is making a wheat ear. It'll be a wheat ear which is not glued until the end because we want all the middle section to remain loose. But the thing to concentrate on as you're looping this wheat ear in your fingers is that you want to make the gap between the loops very regular. And I'm going to try to make roughly 1 millimetre gaps between each of my loops. So I'll make the first one, and I hope you can see there's a small gap between the first fold and the second loop fold. So then I go around the bottom, fold it tight to the bottom of the wheat ear, dampen the fingers again, and then I make my next loop, again about 1 millimetre above the first one. And I'm going to keep going in that way, tight round the bottom, and 1 millimetre gap, and we keep on folding and looping in that way until you come to the end of the strip. And as I say, this is going to give us lots of nice vortex layers because it's a nice long strip. Okay, keep going around. Another 1 millimetre gap. And you can flatten the whole thing in your fingers as you go. Quite regular. And I think that's probably as far as I'm going to get now. There's not quite enough strip left to go around again, so I tear it off at that point and just apply a little bit of glue. The end of the strip there. Just let it go tacky for a moment and then gently smooth it down with my finger. Okay, so basically what we've now ended up with is a long thin wheat ear with lots of loops all going up, and you want to really flatten that between your fingers. Really squish it flat. Now this is the point where we do the magic of the vortexing. So you've squished it that way, you're now going to hold it between your finger and thumb at right angles, just gently in your finger and thumb, and then you're going to start pushing down through the layers, through the loops of your wheat ear, until you get to the last one. Just press the last loop, don't totally flatten it, and then let it spring back in your fingers. And can you see the vortex is starting to form? If you literally bounce it in your fingers a bit, there's the vortex pattern forming. And I find that the more you handle a vortex coil, the more the pattern comes together. You might like to just sharpen off those edges a little bit. And I'm quite pleased with that one. That shows a nice vortexing movement there. Okay, so that's your classic vortex coil. And I mentioned that there's also the variation type, the eccentric type, which looks like that. So basically, here's another wheat ear that I made in exactly the same way as before. And the difference comes just in the way that we squish it. So this time we hold it like we did before, we start pressing down through, but you need to be careful not to press at all into the final loop. And when that springs back, you can see that it's starting to go off to the side. Okay, so if I then take my tweezers, I can pull all those loops to the side like that, and then apply a little bit of glue to the back, just like you would do with, I'm doing it wrong way round, just like you would do with an eccentric coil. Rub a little bit of glue into the back of that point there, just to hold all the layers together, and then when that dries you're going to end up with an interesting eccentric shape like that. So basically that's your two variations of vortex coils, the classic and the eccentric kind, and you can use them in all sorts of ways. It's very versatile, they're great for filling in spaces, flower petals, butterfly wings, etc. So you just need to experiment and see how you get on. But I hope that what I've showed you will help you to understand the method of creating the vortex and then let your creativity roam free. Thanks very much.